My name is Jordan. I am 79. I live on the outskirts of the town of Venton, in a modest, once cozy house that now creaks with every plank, like an old organism that hurts to breathe. In every corner, dust and memories. And on the shelves, photographs that have lost their color, like the people depicted in them. It seems that even the walls have grown tired of my silence. My son Jacob is a successful lawyer in Chicago. My daughter Sarah is the owner of a marketing agency. They rarely come over, and when they do, it is with that feigned politeness that is more humiliating than comforting. They talk about me as if I am not in the room. My granddaughter Eliza is always staring at her phone. She doesn't even say a hello. My grandson Justin always looks at me as if I am a burden that prevents him from breathing. They only come for big holidays. And not to see me, but rather because it's the way it should be. I don't complain out loud. At this age, people don't shout anymore. They just look longer, remain silent more deeply, and remember better. Because when all the conversations become empty, all that remains is to observe. And I know how to observe. My days are the same. I wake up at dawn, not because I want to, but because my body won't let me sleep. I make myself coffee. I sit by the window and watch the world pass by me. People hurry, talk on their phones, laugh. I am transparent. In the store, they bypass me as if I were a shadow. In the hospital, they don't listen, they just check off forms. Even in the church, where I was once an active member of the community, now no one shakes my hand after the service. They just walk past, nodding their heads without any sincerity in their eyes. Silence hurts the most. Once it was an ally. Now it's an executioner. I tried to write again, memoirs, notes. But the words felt empty. As if every sentence was a scream into a vacuum. There are so many stories in this house, but no one wants to hear them. One day at the drugstore, a young pharmacist told me, "Listen, if you can't hear normally, buy a hearing aid." I don't have time for that, and curled her lips in mockery. I nodded silently. Not because I had nothing to say, but because there was no one else to say. On my way home, I noticed a neighbor's teenager throwing trash in my yard. I made a remark, and in response I heard, "What else do you want, old man? Sit in your hole." And I left without even turning around. It wasn't the first insult. But something clicked inside me. Not loudly. Not with anger. But quietly. Coldly. That evening I sat in the dark for a long time. And for the first time in many years, not out of loneliness. And from something else. Internal rot. The resentment was eating away at me like acid. It wasn't anger. It was the truth. No one is waiting for you. They don't listen to you. They don't see you. But they forget one thing. Everyone has forgotten who I was. But I haven't. And I started to remember. I was strong. Stronger than most of those shown on television now. But not physically, not in my muscles, although they didn't fail me then. My strength was in my will. In the ability to make decisions that others turned away from. In responsibility. In loyalty. In the ability to keep my word, even when it cost me dearly. At 18, I joined the army. Those were the years when the country was burning from within, war, protests, fear. But I knew why I was going. Not out of patriotism, but out of duty. My father taught me a simple rule: if something needs to be done, don't wait for someone else to do it for you. I served in an artillery unit. I saw friends burn alive, heard bodies torn apart by explosions. And every night, dreams that would not leave me for decades. But I came back. Whole body, but not quite soul. After the war, I started building a business. Alone. From scratch. I started by selling used auto parts. Then a small auto repair shop. Later, my own chain of workshops across the state. I stayed up all night, counting every cent, taking care of my employees like family. They respected me. They didn't love me, but they respected me. And that was more important. I met my wife, Lila, in a cafe. She worked as a waitress, but there was something more in her eyes than in many women I knew. Intelligence, depth, tenderness. We lived together for 30 years. And then cancer. Without warning. Without a chance. I was left alone with 2 children. And I raised them. In the morning, school meetings, in the afternoon, work, at night, cleaning, planning, fatigue. I didn't complain. I was a support. Always. When Jacob won his first case, he didn't call me. I found out on the news. When Sarah opened the office, she sent me a postcard, didn't come. They are gone. Their world is shiny, digital, trendy. Mine is old, like a paper dictionary. They don't need my stories. They need silence, so they don't have to look away from their screens. But I remember. Every wounded look. Every victory. Every choice made not for myself, but for them. And now, silence. Contempt. Forgetting. But this is not the end. They started talking about the nursing home quietly, but I could hear everything. Sarah would call Jacob late at night, thinking I was already asleep. She would say, "You have no idea how difficult it is. He sits there staring at me like a ghost. I can't do this. He's already got something wrong in his head. He has to think about the house, the care and all that." They thought I was weak not only physically but also mentally. But I remembered everything. Every word. When I asked directly, they disappeared. Jacob looked up from the phone, coughed, and said, "Dad, we're just worried. It's not because we don't love you. It's just that life is different now. We want you to be safe." Safety, yes. In a room with artificial light, among other people's bodies and the sterile smell of medicine. This is not safety. This is oblivion wrapped in a package of care. Eliza, my granddaughter, once said to me, "You know, Grandpa, you look so strange." It's scary. It's like you want to say something, but you can't. I could. I just didn't want to waste words on those who can't hear. She laughed, rolled her eyes and added, "Maybe you don't understand what's going on anymore." Another time I was standing in line at a supermarket. Behind me, 2 guys, about 20 years old, started giggling. "Look, now Grandpa will start counting coins, like always." Delay at the checkout, classic. One of them deliberately pushed me with his shoulder. I looked at him. Calmly. Without saying a word. He smiled and walked past. People around me were silent. At the hospital, I was assigned a new therapist. A young man, self-confident, with a fake smile. He muttered something, not taking his eyes off the computer. "How old are you?" "Well, what do you want?" "At your age, it's normal. Let's not exaggerate." And I talked about the pain that kept me awake. I talked about it sincerely, and he talked about me statistically. That night I took out an old notebook. For the first time in decades. On the first page I wrote, "I remember everyone." And then there were dates, names, details. Not anger, but clarity. Who, when, how. Not hysteria, an archive. It happened on Tuesday, a typical autumn day, when the sky hangs low and the air smells of earth and damp leaves. I was leaving the market. I bought bread and some apples. My hand can't hold anything heavy anymore, so I took only what I needed. On the corner near the bus stop, I saw a young woman nervously rummaging in her bag. "Excuse me," I said, "can you tell me what time it is?" She looked at me. Her eyes were empty. She laughed, dryly, mockingly. "You're all just waiting to be pitied." Old people with watches on their wrists, playing at helplessness. 2 guys nearby laughed. One pushed my elbow. I couldn't help myself. The bag fell, the apples rolled along the sidewalk. One of them even stepped on one on purpose. I leaned over, and at that moment I lost my balance. I fell to my knees, palm in a cold, dirty puddle. People walked by. One turned away. The other captured the moment on her phone. I lay on the asphalt, and my apple flowed nearby, like a small life that was not destined to reach home. Silence in my head. Black, dense, like a night in the desert. But not empty. Something was being born there. Something forgotten, primary. I got up alone. Slowly. I clenched my fist, not from pain, but from clarity. It was not just a day. It was an inauguration. The birth of a new me. I would no longer be a shadow. At home, I sat by the window for a long time. Then I went to the pantry. There, under the old lid, in a dark box, lay my past. Contacts. Letters. Memos. Accesses. I was not going to scream. I was going to act. Coldly. Carefully. And everyone would get their own. I took out an old safe, the code to which had not been typed for decades. Inside was a thin blue folder. In it were the connections that I had once treasured like gold. In business, especially where big money was involved, there were always people who owed you a favor. And there were favors for which they did not thank you, they only remembered. Tommy Lawson was now the owner of a security company, once my junior mechanic, whom I had saved from prison. I called him, only said, "This is Jordan," and the silence on the other end deepened. "What do you need?" he asked seriously, without delay. "Information. And a few reminders." "It will be." The following week I had at my disposal a personal laptop with everything I needed, databases, accesses, addresses. Age had not taken away my ability to think. It had only taught me to wait. And now I knew how to wait better than anyone. I started small. From Eliza. Her world is Instagram, followers, image. Through a fake account, I posted a few edited photos. Innocently, but effectively. Made her make excuses, explain herself, her face appeared in anonymous gossip, with speculation. Her thin social threads began to crack. But I didn't enjoy it, I was fixing it. Then Justin. He depended on a sports scholarship. One anonymous report of academic dishonesty, and the scholarship was in doubt. He didn't even realize that the teacher who had put him under suspicion was a former friend of one of my old acquaintances. And it all looked like just an unfortunate coincidence. He started to get nervous, blame his parents, and snapped at his sister. The family front was cracking. Sarah. Her agency was a source of pride. But there were old sins in her accounting that she had once asked not to formalize. I found those records. Because of the journalist's pseudonym, they became a pretext for an internal investigation. Sarah didn't know it was me. But each call she made to her brother became more disturbing. And Jacob. I left him for last. I didn't expect applause. I didn't seek triumph. It wasn't revenge, it was a response. An echo of years of neglect. And now it had returned to everyone, like a shadow that never leaves. Jacob had arrived unexpectedly. Not as a son, but as a lawyer, preoccupied with legal troubles related to our family name. He came into my house, for the first time in 6 months, and was silent for a long time. His eyes didn't seek my gaze. He sat, clasping his hands. Finally he said, "What did you do, Dad?" I didn't answer right away. I just placed an old photo frame in front of him, the three of us, back with Lila. Back when their embraces were sincere. When I was alive to them, not a shadow. I just reminded him of who I was. And who I am, I said. He didn't say anything. But when he left, he didn't close the door right away. I stood in the doorway and for the first time in many years, I turned around. A few weeks passed. Sarah stopped being public. Eliza closed her social networks. Justin transferred to another college. The family cracked. But it broke not because of me. but because of their own roots, which they decided to neglect. And then the unexpected happened. The neighbor, a young woman, Laura, brought a pie. Just like that. For the first time in a long time. She sat on the threshold. "Can I sit with you?" I nodded. We were silent, but the silence was different. Not deaf, not offensive. Lively. Human. I saw her eyes, she saw me. Not as an old man. As a person. And at that moment I realized that not all was lost. I started writing again. But not memoirs. But thoughts. Letters. Stories. Unfictional, but real. The neighborhood children began to visit, they listened. They were interested. And I shared. Not to teach. To remember together. My revenge didn't destroy, it opened. Windows. Mirrors. Eyes. And today, before going to bed, I opened that same diary. On the last page I wrote, "Never forget, the quietest voices sound the loudest when the world isn't listening. But everyone will have to listen. I no longer shout. And I'm not silent. I just am." Jordan.